that the words, Father, might strengthen us to glorify you in everything we do. In Jesus' name, amen. So this topic was kind of, I don't want to say forced, but a few months ago, my professor at SAMUC, I attend SAMUC University, I'm completing a degree in public health, and so my professor sent about 10 topics to us. There's maybe about 12 students, and we had about 10 topics to choose from. So I immediately got the email, and I, scanned through it, and okay, that's an easy one. I know this one. I'm going to choose this one. Something related to the medical profession. I'm a nurse by profession, so I chose a really easy one: cholesterol and obesity. I said I can do that, really quickly. So I kind of sent her the email back that because I saw this topic, the truth about eating fish. I said, I'm not really convinced, I'm not convicted that, there's anything wrong with eating fish. Jesus ate fish, why can't we eat fish? This is all legalistic, I'm not going to do it. So I just kind of bypassed that one, sent her the email that this is what I want to do. So, I thought everything was set, I got the first choice. So 3 days later she said, Jannel, what's wrong? You haven't sent me back your topic. So I said, well, I did. I sent it as soon as you sent it to me. I sent it back. So she said, no. So I said, okay, well, let me choose another one, and chose that one anyway. After about 2 days of this, I finally had to choose this one. That's the only one that was left. So I said, okay, well, God, you're talking to me. This is something I need to know, because I love fish. And so I ended up doing the research for it, and it was an eye-opening experience. So I'm just going to share what I learned about it.
Sure.
Okay, so the question is it okay to eat fish? This was my gut impression that if Jesus ate fish, then we could eat it. So let's look at a Bible verse. And I even remembered, specifically seeing this Bible verse. And let's go back. Okay, so Luke 24, verse 42 to 43, it says, and they gave him, and this is one of the Bible verses you read in the Bible marking, and they gave him a piece of boiled fish and honeycomb, and he ate it and did eat before them. So Jesus ate fish. So why can't we? So let's look at it. So the truth about it, what's the truth about eating fish? Why isn't it safe today as it was, centuries ago? So the truth about it is that there are 5 major chemicals in the atmosphere that are hazardous to our health, and they are mainly found from consuming fish. So these are the chemicals. Mercury, that's the number 1 toxin, the number 1 hazard. Then we have other chemicals, PCP, dioxin, DDT, and chlorine. And by the way, I heard announced about 3 months ago on the television, because of the slump in the economy in America. I don't know if you were following the news several months ago, where we were having problems paying back our debt. So because of that, the President Obama announced that they are trying to regulate, trying to fix the slump in the economy by cutting out a lot of the governmental regulations that have been in effect for a long time. So basically, a lot of these companies that are creating the toxins that are in our atmosphere, like mercury and all of these toxins, right now, a lot of these companies are deregulated because of the fact that it takes a lot of money for the EPA, the FDA it consumes a lot of the funds. A lot of funds are spent regulating companies that dump waste into the water and expose the atmosphere to these toxins. So we need to even be more careful now because of this deregulation. Okay, so the truth about eating fish, one of the major chemicals, like I said, mercury. If you remember, I don't know if you remember the Alice in Wonderland Disney movie and the Mad Hatter. And so where did the Mad Hatter get the name? So it says the Mad Hatter of Alice in Wonderland didn't get his name by accident. A long time ago, when they used to make hats, when they wore hats, the material that they used to make the hat stiff was made from mercury. So hat makers would constantly breathe in the fumes from this chemical, and not knowing that mercury was the chemical that caused these hat makers to have these symptoms. The symptoms were comparable to like seizure. If you've seen someone with like a focal seizure where they're, you know, basically shaking and they have uncontrollable movements, you know, people that use these chemicals to stiffen their hats, they would have these symptoms, and so that's where the Mad Hatter got that expression came from. You know, it wasn't really fictitious. I mean, this was a fictitious movie, but those hat makers actually, you know, were toxic from using the mercury used in hat making back then. So mercury is the major contaminant, and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, they make statements over and over again. If you go onto the website, you will see all this information. And the EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency of the United States, and they say that the consumption of contaminated fish and shellfish is the primary route of human exposure to methylmercury.
Mercy.
So how does mercury enter the fish that we eat? The main source is from air emission from power generation industrial waste. So I'll show you some information how mercury settles into the water, into the soil. So we need to find out how does mercury enter the fish. So what happens is that, let's go to a picture here, and I'll come back to that slide. So here we have, right here, these are power companies, and if you live in an area, and you don't even necessarily have to be in that local area where you have a lot of power companies that generate emissions into the atmosphere. So the particles, whatever they're generating, whatever chemical they're producing in that factory, those chemicals go into the atmosphere, and the chemicals enter the clouds, and then from condensation, when it rains, the rainwater itself carries those dangerous chemicals, which is one reason why you don't want to drink rainwater as well without boiling it. You know, I used to think, wow, the rain is coming directly from the clouds, it has to be pure, you know? But I mean, even nowadays, and I remember being out in the rain when we had to clean up. We had a major storm here in Korea, and I actually stayed in the rain cleaning. And when it rained, I can actually feel the rain in my eyes burning. So I knew that there's a lot of chemicals, a lot of acid in the rain. So these chemicals come from these types of emissions. So from the rain that occurs, the rain deposits into the water, the ocean, the lakes. Also, it goes into the soil. So the mercury that enters the atmosphere from rain goes into the water, and it's transformed. Mercury is transformed to methylmercury. So let's go back up here to this slide. So mercury, back to the next slide. The main source is air emission from power generation and industrial and waste disposal activities. So what happens is the bacteria in the water transforms the mercury into methylmercury. And methylmercury is easily absorbed in fish and humans, and it's not easy to eliminate. So we have methylmercury is the contaminant that's really easily digestible in fish and humans. So mercury works its way up the food chain as the large fish consume contaminated small fish. The predatory fish, such as large tuna and swordfish, we don't eat swordfish, shark, but with the fish here that, that are considered clean fish, large tuna and mackerel, they can have mercury concentrations in their bodies up to 10,000 times the amount of those in the surrounding habitats. Okay, so here we said that the methylmercury is eaten. Let's go to a better slide, I think the next one. So methylmercury is represented by the yellow dot. So here we see the small fish will eat the methylmercury, the big fish will eat the smaller one, and it's concentrated as the small fish is eaten by the bigger fish. So the bigger fish is the fish with the highest concentration of contaminants. So that's why you want to stay away from the large fish. Okay, so here we go. And when I came to Korea, I was really, when I saw the size of the fish that they sold, like in the market, I know we were talking about the fact that in Korea, there's a lot of different types of fish eaten. I mean, there's even, what do you call it, what's the one with the...
Eel?
Stingray
Squid.
and so
Squid.
forth. Yeah, but for the most part, Korea encourages small fish that comes in their diet, and you know they eat a lot of anchovies, and this is one of the famous fish that they sell, gogi. I think it's called gogi. Yeah. So if you go to the restaurants and they have a dish called what do you call it?
Sashimi? Raw fish?
Nutrition rice, you know, where you get some rice with the, all the other nuts in it. Anyway, it's a particular dish where they will give you just basically 2 small fish.
Chobap?
Yeah, it's not gogi?
Yeah, it was
Fish with rice and fish?
Yeah.
That is chobak?
Fish and rice together?
Ah, okay. So basically, you know, I think, you know, Korea, I really applaud them for trying to, I guess, serve the best fish or make available the best fish to their citizens. Even at the English village where I work, they only serve small fish. They don't serve big fish at all in the cafeteria because we cater to youth. So this you want to stay away as much as possible from the big fish and try to eat the small fish because of that concept.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the adverse effect on human health? Brain damage, especially in children. So if you're pregnant and you know you go to your doctor's office, the doctor will advise you to try not to eat any fish at all. If you do, you should eat no more than 1 or 2 meals of with fish per week because of this contaminant. So it says brain damage is the most common, especially in the developing fetus,
Yeah.
and is likely to be sufficient to result in a number of children who have to struggle to keep up in school and who might require remedial classes.
Yeah, I read in the American government they said pregnant women should maybe eat maximum 22 fish per year.
What is
Like
that?
American government was recommending pregnant women to eat a maximum of about 22 small fish per year.
And maybe
Like
probably
that.
women of childbearing
And less
age.
if possible, yeah.
right.
Pregnant women like that. And one of my friends, his wife didn't care about this issue, and she ate lots of seafood during pregnancy, and her son got autism.
Autism?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So it's a
Yeah.
big concern, but I mean the EPA, the FDA, they're not going to be aggressive in advertising this because of the fact that they're going to be taking away business from those commercial, you know, providers of fish. So they're not going to be very aggressive. They're going to tell you what you need to know, and then they back off, basically. So how did we determine that mercury was creating these issues? So in Japan in the 1930s, a company in Japan was dumping chemicals into the water, into the ocean, and fish was the main source of protein in Minamata, Japan. So the residents were dying, children were being born with cerebral palsy and mental retardation. Even the cats that ate the fish were just, they called it cat suicide. They didn't know why. The cats were just falling into the river. They'll just be walking, fall into the river and just, you know, die from eating fish. And so they traced it, even when they found out that the mercury was the cause of this problem, they kept it quiet for at least 50 years. And so after it was actually you know, proven that mercury was as the result of toxins being dumped into the water, that the residents were able to sue the company, and they received compensation. So fish contamination is global. So if mercury that is found in fish, even far from the release of the toxin, will enter your waterway. So if you say, okay, I don't live in areas where they have chemical plants, you're not safe, because the fish will travel, you know,
Upstream.
yes. So it was even, mercury was even found in fish in the Arctic, far from, you know, areas where they have power plants.
Ellen White says that too.
Yes,
Minister of Healing. that-
absolutely.
She said that travel to distant waters.
What? She says what?
And,
How
She
about,
says that you may catch clean fish, or you may catch fish in a place that's clean water, but that same fish might have traveled from a filthy place where there's sewage.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
so even fish from the river?
yes, yes, and we'll talk about that here as well. So, there was a convention, and there were 45 governmental delegates from 40 countries, and their hair samples were tested for mercury. You can either test yourself for mercury by a blood sample, or they can clip your strand of your hair and test it. So they clipped a strand of hair from all 45 delegates from 40 different countries, and they were everyone was positive for mercury.
Mm.
So the FDA the FDA regulate commercial fishing. So these are the major vessels that go to Alaska and all these other countries to harvest fish from the ocean. And what the FDA does is that it will sample randomly when these ships come in to dock. They will randomly sample the fish to find out the content, the level of contaminant in the fish. So they're the ones that are responsible for commercial fishing, and they have many advisories. If you go onto the website, they will tell you. Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, so here's the FDA gives us the level of contaminant, of mercury contaminant in specific fish. And if you fish eater, you want to be aware of this. King mackerel, very high, 0.730. This is, I think it's nanograms per, I don't remember the specific concentration, but anyway, king mackerel, the highest here. If you see anchovy, it's basically almost one of the lowest. You have the, anyway, let's go down further here to grouper. One of the, major specialties or gourmet type of dishes that we have in the Bahamas. Very expensive, but I didn't know it was this high. So I've already kind of talked to my family about eating grouper. And snapper. So this albacore tuna, very high in mercury. Okay, so so we don't want to eat, of course, these fishes. If you eat fish, you should not eat up to 12 ounces, which is 2 average meals a week, of a variety of fish and shellfish that are lower in mercury. So they're advising us only to eat those that are lower in mercury, no more than 2 meals. 5 of the most commonly eaten fish low in mercury, of course, can-like tuna, salmon. Salmon is very low in mercury, but it has some other problems. Albacore tuna is very high in mercury. So if you eat albacore tuna, it's saying only 6 ounces. And of course, if you have a family member that gives you, catches fish, and you have to be sure that if you eat that fish from the family member, it's not been tested by the FDA, not been tested by the EPA, so only eat one, make sure that's the only fish you eat that week. So, sometimes we think that, when we get gifts from friends, it's really a treat, but it's actually, more dangerous if we don't know that it's been randomly tested.
Some of those fish, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Go ahead.
Just gonna ask you, have you heard of shark cartilage supposedly that helps to shrink tumors? What do you think of that?
Yes, I've heard of the harvesting of shark cod. It's very expensive, but we don't eat shark anyway, so
I was gonna ask you that.
Yeah.
No shark?
Yeah,
Some of those other fish we don't eat also?
cowfish, yeah, dolphin.
Cowfish,
Mhm.
okay.
Mhm.
Catfish and
Right.
swordfish, is that?
No, we don't eat swordfish. No, we don't eat
Swordfish
swordfish.
It's unclean.
Yes.
It's unclean.
Yes.
The funny thing
As a
about
shark.
this is for males, when you go fishing, you catch a little small fish, at least in America, going out in the Bahamas,
Uh-huh.
that's embarrassing. You wanna catch the
Right,
big
you want to
fish.
catch the big one, yes. So, but it's, now
Not
we
good for the
know.
health.
Higher concentrations of mercury in the big fish.
mercury.
Okay, so here again, the EPA will regulate your recreational fish. Is that recreational fishing means that the EPA will go and check the lakes in your areas, the local lakes, to test the fish there. So And they tell you which lakes they tested and the amount of mercury they found in each specific lake. So these websites are very good if you want to, make sure, and I know, all of us, we're not from the US, so, but I'm sure your country should have something comparable. Okay, so mercury contamination is national. It's even in rural countryside lakes and river. How safe is the fish in Korea? This is just a research study that was done, and it just is basically summarized that your blood level mercury will increase as you continue to consume fish in Korea as well. So no difference in Korea. Mercury cannot be cooked out or cut out of fish. So what about the mercury level and yellow dust? When we have the yellow dust contamination during the spring, it says here, and this is an article that I was reading in April 2011. It says the worst thing about the yellow dust is the pollutants like mercury. So when they give those advisory warnings to stay indoors, or you want to make sure that these are the type of contaminants that you will be breathing in if you are exposed to the air during these periods. So stay away, stay inside.
Wow.
Okay, another contaminant, PCP, and this is used it's now banned in the United States, but because it's still legal in other countries, we are still affected by it, because remember, fish toxin is global. So just because it's regulated in your country, if it's not regulated in another country, you will still be exposed to the fish. So it accumulates in plants and crops and taken up by the bodies of fish. People who ingest the fish may be exposed to PCP, and it causes a variety of health problems. So these are the types of chemicals and other types of industry uses for PCP. And another chemical that we want to be concerned about is dioxin, and this is when we have waste that's being burned. Even when you have forest fires, I know you hear, I used to always wonder, when during a forest fire, even though the fire might be, miles away from your home, you would have advisories on the television or the radio to say that, there's a forest fire here, you need to kind of leave your home for a while, and because of the fact that the smoke from fires, that even if it's organic, even if it's not something that's an industrial waste, even organic burning of waste or trees, if you breathe it in, it can be a form of a toxin. Coal, wood, so this is another toxin that can get into the air, and it can enter the waterway from the rain as well. And it causes cancer if you're exposed in high levels. And it accumulates in fatty fish like salmon. So salmon is safe in terms of the mercury issue, but for dioxin, it accumulates in fish that's fatty. So you want to follow the health advisory regarding the consumption of fish. Remove fat from the fish. If you eat salmon, make sure you remove the fat. Okay, then DDT is one of the another chemical that can create hazard if you are eating fish. It accumulates in the fish. It used to be a pesticide used in the United States, but it's no longer used in the United States, but it's used in other countries. And it still enters the environment. That's what they use DDT for malaria. Any place where you have mosquitoes, that chemical can enter the waterways, and it can cause a toxic hazard to your health. So it builds up in plants, animals, fatty fish, bird, and so forth. The Department of Health and Human Services determined that DDT could be a human carcinogen, so it could cause cancer. And you cannot, anyway, cooking reduces the amount of DDT in fish.
Battery is dying. My battery is dying, sorry.
Where is it?
Behind it.
Okay, another toxin is chlordane. Also has been targeted by the EPA in the United States. And these are chemicals that have been regulated in the United States but still used in other countries. But it does still enter the waterway, enters the ocean, and it can cause problems with the endocrine system, the nervous system, problems with your liver, digestive system. So let's look at some of the fish. Some questions, persons have questions that, what about fish that's farmed? What about fish that's raised in fish farms? Is it safe? So basically, these fish that are raised in fish farms, they live very closely together. They want to maximize their return, so they really grow the fish in close quarters. So what happens is, because the fish are raised in close quarters, the skin of the fish can become cankerous. They start to grow sores and tumors because they rub up against each other. So to prevent this, they use pesticides and antibiotics. And they basically throw it into the water, and so the fish, of course, they are affected by all these chemicals as well. So that's an issue with eating fish raised on farms. And of course, all of the waste that they're basically eating and drinking each other's waste, because they're raised in those close quarters. And the pink color you see in the farmed salmon is artificial. It's not the true color. And that's also a toxin, the color that they use to make the salmon pink. So, and I know if you go into stores like Costco and so forth, you know that the wild salmon, the Alaskan wild salmon, you see how much more expensive it is than the farm-raised salmon, and that's because of the fact that you have. And so anyway, the farm-raised salmon as well has a lot of fat because they're not swimming in open water, so it's not as healthy. And another issue is that the farm-raised fish, they also fed fish meal. So they actually get fish and they grind it up and throw it into the ponds where the fish are. So that the farm-raised fish are also eating fish that have toxins.
That's a calcium, calcium.
Yes. Okay, so what about fish oils? Are they safe, fish oils? So they're not entirely. Some of the oils have PCPs. Some of the oils still have the PCPs. So you want to make sure if you're going to buy fish oil, you have to. They have to actually state on the bottle or somewhere on the label that it is PCP free. If you don't see that it's PCP free, it has PCP. So what about the radiation from the nuclear fallout in Japan? The Gulf, are we affected? So close to Korea. Well, right after that nuclear leak, the Japanese government announced that yes, there were high levels. There was high level of radioactive iodine in the fish caught halfway between the reactor site and Tokyo. So already the fish was contaminated with that. With the contaminant from the power plant. Okay, so if we shouldn't eat fish, how can we obtain omega-3 fatty acid? So that's the major thrust with the medical community is that we do need the omega-3 fatty acid to prevent us from having heart disease, brain. It helps to basically keep our blood vessels clear in our brain and in our heart. So the AMA is really proactive in recommending that we eat, fish weekly to prevent this. But omega-3 fatty acid, the fish that we eat is a concern. So how else can we get omega-3 fatty acid? So Dr. Howard Sachs from the Harvard Public School of Public Health says that our bodies cannot make omega-3 fats, so we must get them through foods. And omega-3 fatty acid associated with many health benefits, including heart protection and possibly stroke. So that's his, of course, information regarding the benefits. So another means of getting omega-3 fatty acid, aside from eating fish, you can get this nutrient from some vegetable oils, such as soybean oil, canola oil, flaxseed, very high in omega-3, and walnuts. So you don't have to eat fish to get the omega-3. You can get it from a plant source.
Well, excuse me,
Yes.
but did they say rapeseed or grapeseed?
Rapeseed.
Rapeseed.
Rapeseed, what is that again?
Yes.
Canola, okay.
So I didn't know the
Rapeseed canola.
Rapeseed.
We have rapeseed and then we have grapeseed. Rapeseed is canola.
Okay.
They're both good. Rapeseed oil is good as well, but it doesn't have the omega-3. So these are the foods, the plant sources rich in omega-3 fatty acid. And so here they are. Make sure you get them in your diet. Make sure you include them in your diet. So here, the Bible tells us that Jesus ate meat. So again, why shouldn't we? So I hope that information